YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So today we have the Exotek rear hubs for the DR10, and these, according to instructions, will fit on either side, and you also get a bunch of shims with them to let you change the wheelbase. And they do have the little grub screws that I believe they go in the holes on the front of them to hold them exactly where you want them on the pin. Which is a bit strange because I believe these pins are into plastic arms, so not sure if it'd be a good idea to tighten them all the way up, but once we get fitting them we can see how it fits and see what we need. But let's get you in for a close-up look and we'll crack on fitting the rear wheel hubs. Right, so first thing we're going to need to do is get the rear wheels off, get them out of the way, and I've been doing a bit of work on this, so we'll have to you'll have to excuse the rear anti-roll bar being disconnected. Need to get that connected back up, but you won't need to do that to do the rear wheel hubs, I don't believe. But I've had this rear anti-sway bar disconnected because I've been adjusting the links, but while we've got that, I might as well tighten that back up. I believe the setting on these is leave it recessed 1mm. Right, so first thing we're going to need on these is we're going to have to take the top link off. Now I believe the stock ones are directional, but according to the instructions with the Exotek parts, they're not directional. They'll fit on either side, and I believe these top links go in from the top, not from the side like they do on here. So we'll have to see what difference that makes to it. And then you've got a little tiny retaining screw on the lower arm, and you'll need a 1.5mm driver for these. And you can just compress the suspension to just get it out of the way. Might be able to use the end of one of them. Yep. So the end of a servo plug fits, or the male end at servo plug. So we remove that, and then you can slide out your drive shaft. Then we're going to have to pop the hex off and the pin. Then you want to slide the drive shaft out with its bearing, and then we're going to want to pop the front bearing out. So that's got us first hub removed. So we get a few stickers. We get a little instruction sheet that just shows you to position the top link up at the top and the shims where needed. So if we start with one of the hubs, the rear bearing should fit into this hub, hopefully. Yep, that just snaps in. Then you want your front bearing on. You want your tiny little drive pin. And then you can get your hex drive on. Right, so let's have a look at how many of these shims we're going to actually need. So I think to start with I'm gonna get it pretty central. So you get a whole bunch of these little grub screws and spacer shims. Looks like we get 3 for either side. So, and we've got an upper and lower position, so I'm going to try it first. I'm going to go for the upper position, and let's see how many of these shims we need. So if we go one up front, and then I've got to try and position one to the rear, but definitely going to have to get drive shaft in, and then you're going to have to carefully get that into position. So we've got one shim at either side, and that gets it perfectly centered. Then you're going to want to get your tiny little screw, and just compress the suspension a little bit and you can get that screwed in, and then your pin can't fall out. Then if we take a look at the position that this is going to sit in, so I would say go for the front one, but I'm going to put a tiny bit of thread lock on this. So make sure your drive shaft's in position, and then you should just be able to screw this down. So that looks like it fits quite well. The only other thing, there's not really much play in that at all, but you've got two little holes for grub screws. So I think what I'm going to do is, let's have a look what size these are. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit of thread lock on these, and I'm just going to snug them down to take a bit of play, or any play up. So that pin doesn't end up wearing through the aluminium. But I'm not going to tighten these down so the pin is trying to twist in the plastic constantly. I'm just going to nip them down. We're not getting any restricted movement in suspension. So, looks like that's one side fitted pretty successfully. So again, on the opposite side, I'm just going to remove the top link. So that's got its top link out, and I'm just going to twist it into position while we've got that there, make it a bit easier. Then we're going to need to unscrew the tiny little sort of retaining screw that stops the pin falling out, and then we're just going to have to borrow one of these little pins. We can slide this pin out, and then pop the hex off, and you don't lose your little pin because they're tiny. So we'll get his bearings out, and don't lose your pin out of your drive shaft, because it's only the bearing that holds that one in place. So once we've got his X in place, we then want to put his bar back through with one shim. Then you can drop your drive shaft back in, and I'm aiming for the top holes again. And see if we can do this easier with a knife blade, because you only need to move these a tiny amount at a time, and then they line up. So that's got that lined up. Then we're going to need this tiny little screw. And while you're doing this, make sure your drive shaft don't pop out. Until you put the top link in place, you can still pop the drive shaft in and out, so It's not such an issue. Then once we've got that in place, we're going to get his little grub screws in while it's nice and easy to work on it. And your thread lock's going to hold these in place, so you don't really need to tighten them down. So once we've got that done, finally get a little bit of thread lock on this top one for the top link. And again, we're aiming for the outermost position. So all that should be left to do now is get his wheels back on and give you a good idea of what they look like. You've got the Exotek logo front and rear on them both. They are really nice looking parts, the Exotek parts. I think it's pronounced Exotek. Not sure if it's meant to be a take on Exotic, but it's spelled Exotek. So the only parts that we're not using is we've got 2 plastic rear hubs, and these are right and left handed, and we've got 2 spare shims, the tiny little ones that we don't need at the moment. I'm not sure, I mean it does tell us to go for the outside link, but I think now we can lengthen the links to bring the wheels further flat, which that's what I was struggling with the stock ones, getting them where I wanted them. But let's have a go at adjusting them and see how close I can get them to what I actually wanted them to. So certainly more luck than judgment, but the distance I've got my links set to, if I move it to the innermost holes on the top on the links, so literally just move that back onto the innermost, and for the length of the links that I already got adjusted, that sits them perfectly flat on my car. Definitely going to be something you'll have to look at. Depends on how you've already got your vehicle set up, whether the inner or the outer will work better for you. But certainly on mine, it looks like the links are set up perfect length for it to just sit on the innermost of the holes, and they're lining up pretty well, especially when it squats the car down. But they're quite easy to fit and fit really well. Doesn't look like there's any movement in them or anything. So yeah, quite impressed. But let's wrap this one up. So there we have it. We've now got the Exotek front and rear hubs fitted. They do fit really well. There's no play whatsoever in the wheels now, which is quite impressive. As for what holes you use for the top links, depends on what you've got your original arms set to, but you can just adjust them anyway. So that's something you're just going to have to play about with and get it to suit your needs. But yeah, they do fit. Let's see what the positioning's like once we drop the body on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with where they're sat. They look pretty good at that. Matches wheelbase, so it's not really altered it from how it was with the stock ones on. That's using 1 shim either side, but you can move them, so you can have it set slightly forward, slightly towards rear for a longer wheelbase. But again, just have to see what suits your style of driving in your body shell. But thanks again for watching Wtf Rc Cars. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys again in the next one.